Hey Team YouTube, this is my latest purchase for working on a problem with an automobile where I need to weld in some replacement steel. I just selected to purchase the Hobart Handler 100. This is a flux core welder and I know nothing about welding. The unboxing is like this. Inside of the box, hey Team YouTube, looking at the Hobart .030 gasless flux cored wire. Here, this is the 2-pound spool, and this is what is recommended in the manual. Right now, I'm going to stick to the manual and not go crazy on buying any other vendors' flux cored wire choices. And like I say, the tip on the welder, as well as the 2 extra included, are the .030 tip. This welder will also accept 0.035 inch diameter flux cored wire. So there we go. Hey Team YouTube. So what we have in here is the shaft that holds the wire spool. We have a plate. We have a spring. We have a tensioning knob and the diagram that shows us how to do it. If we look up at the unit, the wire comes off this way, and they say to take this and tighten it until there is a slight force needed to move the spool. So we're going to try that now. Hey Team YouTube, so what I elected to do after I removed the wire from the spool and unbented it and a part of it broke off is to stuff it back in a hole on the spool because the wire was unraveling on me. So now we have it. We have this plate here which has like a D shape. It only goes on one way, and then the spring, and then the knob. Of course the knob just tightens and loosens, and they just want a little bit of tension when you move it. So we're going to play around with that until I'm, kind of happy with it. We'll see what happens. Hey Team YouTube, here is the page that goes through how to load the wire spool through the feed assembly. And I'm going to see if I can use an LED light here and not mess everything up with the flickering. But this is called opening the pressure assembly. This tightenable thing here, there's a spring inside there. You just bring it down, it looks like that, and then you take the wire and you feed it through. And I have to do this off camera. I don't have anyone willing to hold the camera for me. We'll see what happens. By the way, cut the cables off, and now the weld wire is laid out straight. The unit is turned on, but I have the amps turned down. Is that amps? Or the duty load thing here turned down to 0, and it's fan only, so that means there's no voltage going through it. So that's, if you hear the noise, the fan humming, that's what's going on. Off camera, let's see if I can get that wire going. Okay, Team YouTube, let's see here. It says open pressure assembly, pull and hold wire, cut off end, which I did cut off the wire end because it was kind of, bent up a little bit. I want to have it nice and straight. Push wire through, guides into gun liner, continue to hold wire. So I did have the wire unspool on me a little bit because I was an idiot. And here we are. I've got it loaded into here. That knob thing there is still down, and I'm just looking at it, and here is the, what did they call this, the pressure knob, and it looks like that's just a ball bearing there that pushes down. Make sure it's on the little grooved piece right there, and out the welder it goes. So I think this is the total, in terms of the money in the unit other than the inverter. This assembly here looks like it's pretty complicated and things like that. So up here, that knob there, I have it pretty tight so it wouldn't unspool on me again while I was stuffing this in. And then of course I'm tightening or loosening this back up until it moves pretty easily. I want to make sure that this whole moving assembly thing here can pull against that tension. That tension needs to be set between unrolling the spool, I think, and this thing being able to pull it effectively. So we'll see what happens. On with the instructions. Hey Team YouTube. So the welder will not feed wire unless you have a welding voltage selected. And a feed, this is essentially a feed speed right here. So, going back over here, just doing a quick test. If I push the trigger, the little knob turns, which is what we want. Now we need to adjust this knob here and the pressure thing here to get it so it feeds and does a good job, does not slip, it isn't too tight so the wire doesn't move, according to the directions. So, like I say, so I got the manual in front of me. Hey Team 2 Tube, so here's what happens when you press the trigger. The wire feeds through the spool here, off the spool, and through the wire feeder. That's what you want. And they say, the directions, make sure this is straight. I have a little bend in it. I'm probably going to do this off camera and pick it up and make sure I can get it through, and all will be good. So probably, since this is working right now, I will probably just leave this as is in terms of the tension here and the tension there, and we'll go from there. So Team YouTube, I wasn't quite sure what all of this meant in terms of feeding it and then having the insulator tip off and whatnot, and but I would suggest that anyone that's going to do this who's never done it before, make sure you review the instructions. I feel like I did okay, but I could have done better. So, and here we are. So I'm going to put the copper welder tip and the insulator back on, and I think I got myself, I'm all set up right now, ready to go try a weld. One of the things they say somewhere in the manual is to make sure that when you're assembling and disassembling things, you don't take things just, you know, finger tight. So I decided to buy an official welding style pliers. Of course, this one allows you to cut, then tighten up an electrode, and then these, I guess, allow you to clear jams or something like that. I'm not sure. And insulated handles. I decided not to be a cheapskate and just use regular side cutters and whatever else I could find lying around. And sure enough, this middle gap here is electrode sized. So, or whatever that the copper welding tip there is. So, yeah, I'm just when it comes to this welding stuff, it seems like investing in the right tools is something you really need to do. That's just my personal belief, and I'm the person that tries to cheap out on everything. Hey Team YouTube, so got some welding gloves, got myself a welding helmet. Of course, you can't just get, you know, black or red or blue. You always have to get a pattern thing. And honestly, this was on sale. It was much less than $100. So, like, okay, great. And then here is my setup. It's on a vise, and I have the grounding thing here on a bolt that holds the vise on. Here's my work pieces. I wanted to just do a butt weld, so I have basically unlimited access to sheet metal at work. So drops from a laser table, I can get them to cut custom sheet metal on an off shift or something like that for projects, which of course I've taken people up on before. And the settings here on the welder were 3 and 30 because this was something either 11 or 13, so I just set it to the 12 gauge steel setting. And again, here's my weld, and I got a weld clean and brush here. Just clean that up here. Flux core looks nasty. It leaves this brown residue. And I will say this, that my starting technique is horrible. Very nervous. The gun was jumping all over because I was like, oh God, I have all this amperage in my, in my hand here. But yeah, not terrible for a first pass. This has been cooling for a few minutes. Just see here, still quite toasty. So wouldn't want to play with it too much in terms of hold it in your hand. So, but the goal now is to get lots of drops from work off the laser table here. I can get these all day long and practice. I could practice the butt welds. I can practice the whatever the name of the weld is where they're next to each other. I would take a grinder and grind this out a little bit. So I'm going to try to practice with part of that spool and get good before I tackle the van. So just going to show you what I'm going to do on the van here. So, hey Team YouTube, the goal of buying the welder, in addition to other household projects, first things first, it will be to take and fix my minivan. This is the rear cradle bolt, and what has happened is it spins freely inside of the frame, which means the weld nut up in there is broken loose, and all it can do is spin. So there's really no way to repair this unless I cut out the sheet metal with a cutoff wheel on a grinder, and then make a new piece of sheet metal and put a big weld nut on it. This is an M16x2 weld nut, and then I'm going to buy all new bolts, obviously, because I ground this one off. There's not much of it left. I'm going to need new bolts. I'm just going to buy new bolts all around and put a fair amount of anti-seize on them, so every time I ever have to do this ever again, I won't be fighting corrosion. I also have up in the front another bolt up there that it broke, and again, I'm just going to cut it out, put new weld nut in, and get a new bolt. And I need a welder to do all that. Have a great day, YouTube.